Hello, Lions Nation, and welcome to another edition of Believe in Lions. It is brought to you by FanDuel. I'm Trevor Thompson. Glad to be joined again this week by NFL analyst and co-host rather, of the preferred walk-on college football show. He's a draft expert. We're glad to have his expertise on the show with us again. Dalton Wasserman joins us here this afternoon. And Dalton, how pumped are you for Thursday and the next few days after, as far as the NFL draft goes this weekend?
I'm ready, man. I mean, to get beyond the speculation and the whispers and the rumors, and I know that's fun. I know the grapevine is the most fun thing to be on for this 3-month stretch after the college season ends and, obviously the Super Bowl and everything like that. But, to be off the grapevine and just get into actually where these guys are going to fit in, who gets selected, because you get to Thursday every year, and for as much as everybody for months on end has been predicting and mocking and doing all this, something's going to happen that nobody thought of, right? And that's really going to be the most fun part, especially about Thursday, right? I mean, I think to me, you get past this top 10, I really have no idea what's going to happen beyond that range. So it's as unpredictable a draft as I can remember as well.
It's already started, really, too, with the Giants making a trade with the Bengals, sending Dexter Lawrence there. They've now got 2 picks inside the top 10. So really, it's already kicked off. How surprised were you by that? And now with 2 picks in the top 10, how might that affect things further down the road, especially when it gets to the Lions at 17, as far as things play out early in the draft go?
I think it's a really strong return. I mean, obviously the Giants did not want to give up Dexter Lawrence for anything but premium draft capital, right? And that's what they got with the 10th overall pick. And I think there's a chance it could be a win-win trade. Look, if Dexter Lawrence is healthy, he's a top 3 defensive tackle in the league, and he's a guy who can change the complexion of the Bengals defense, and they needed that so badly. The middle of their defense was just a mess last year, right? And they still have more work to do on it. But I think the Bengals felt like they weren't going to get a player of Lawrence's caliber with that 10th overall pick. And as far as the Giants go, I think they become arguably the most interesting team in this draft. They're the one team with 2 top 10 picks. The trade possibilities are really going to work around them, and depending on what they're going to pick, there's been a lot of talk about teams like, Dallas or even Kansas City moving up even further in the order, but they're going to have to get around the Giants, especially if they're looking for premier defensive pieces. To be honest with you, I don't think that trade specifically affects the Detroit Lions too much, because I think the Giants and Detroit are looking for 2 different things here when you talk about the Giants at wide receiver and maybe linebacker, things like that, whereas the Lions are really looking trench heavy. But you never know, man. I mean, you never know. The opinions on this draft especially seem to be as widespread. They seem to be such high variance compared to past years that you really never know. But it certainly shakes up, I would say, at least the top 10 to 12.
Now, before we jumped on the pod here, you mentioned that you had some trade ideas floating around in your head, and on your podcast, you talked about some of those trade ideas. Share some of those ideas with us. Does that include the Lions, and what do you think might happen that may affect the Lions as far as potential trades go before we get to 17?
So I think they don't include the Lions directly, because I had looked into some trade up and trade down scenarios for them. And I think a lot of teams are going to be looking to trade down, because the talent from probably 15 to about 60 or 70 is really a lot of equally talented guys that you could see go in any order. But I think when it comes doing mock drafts, this entire process, I'd gotten up to about 14 with Baltimore and felt good about what I was picking. And then the second I got to 15 and 16 with Tampa and that Jets pick, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this is where it goes off the rails. And I think what you're going to get possibly with teams trying to trade up and past the Lions into these 2 picks, I think the Bucs and Jets at 15 and 16 are really good trade down candidates. And a big reason for that is we feel, or at least I do, I feel pretty sure that the Lions are going to try to take an offensive tackle at number 17, right? But you got a lot of teams behind them. When I think about Pittsburgh, possibly Carolina, Philadelphia, Cleveland, that they're all going to be jockeying for these guys, and there's going to be an early run. There's possibly 7 offensive tackles that could go in this first round, and then there's a big drop-off from there. So I think the urgency to get these guys, and especially for some of those teams in the early 20s, to try to jump ahead of the Lions at 17, I think that could be there, especially with the Bucs and Jets really as solid trade down candidates, especially Tampa at 15. If I'm them, I'm begging to get out of that pick. I'm just begging to get out of there. There's just not anything there that I see as super suitable unless there's a shocking player that drops to them. I think that's something we should look for. And I do wonder if the Lions then go, you know what? We're hearing some teams might jump us by a spot or 2. Maybe we have to get even further out ahead of that to really get the offensive tackle we want. I think when we get to the middle of this first round, the offensive linemen are going to be a massive story, especially with regard to trades.
Kadyn Proctor's a massive, massive dude. I don't know what your thoughts are on this guy at 17, whether he'll still be there at 17, whether he fits the Lions' need. A couple of mocks I've looked at, I say it's going to be Monroe Freeling at 17. But before we get to who you think might go there, are the Lions a trade down candidate considering the fact that they've got pick 17, they've got pick 50, but those are their only two picks in the top 100 because they traded their third rounder when they picked up Isaac Tesla last season. They've got needs to fill. Could they trade down, hopefully pick up another pick, and maybe fill a need by doing that? Or do you see them sticking there at 17? And who would you think it would be in that spot if they did that? What are your thoughts on 17 and where they might go?
So I think the one reason you mentioned the lack of draft capital there, they're going to want to trade down possibly from 17 or maybe from 50. Also, you get into the second round, you get some more day 2 and day 3 picks. I think it's entirely possible. I think the big thing that's going to determine that, again, I think it is their opinions of these offensive linemen, of all these offensive tackles, right? The one luxury they do have is that, and Pittsburgh is similar in this manner, is that with Penei Sewell and his ability to play on either side, all 7 of those guys, right, could be options for them that I mentioned. Some are right tackles. There's 3 of them that are left tackles. There's 4 of them that were playing right tackle in college. Whereas if I'm a team like the Cleveland Browns, they need a tried and true left tackle, right? They might be a team that trades up for, say, a Kadyn Proctor or a Monroe Freeling because they know he can play left tackle. The Lions have this luxury with Sewell where they could trade back a few spots and maybe they miss out on a Proctor, but they could get, say, a Blake Miller from Clemson or a Maxi Yanicher from Arizona State, as long as they don't drop out too far. If you start getting that past about 24 or 25, I might be a little worried about it, but they do have that luxury that if they wanted to, they have all 7 of those options on the board for them at left or right tackle.
I want to go over these FanDuel odds, and this is if they stick at 17, and these guys are available with the odds, say, with FanDuel, as far as who might be available and who they might select. So right now, the odds-on favorite at plus 290 is Kadyn Proctor. Then you've got Spencer Fano. Monroe Freeling falls in at number 3. And then what I find interesting is Jermon McCoy, if they decide to go for a quarterback and he falls. I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that, but of those names I just listed, who is the best player in your mind at that spot? And just a caveat, if McCoy does fall, is that a guy you would take instead of an O-lineman if you're Detroit?
I probably wouldn't do it instead of an O-lineman. I think corner is something that team could look at on day 2. And McCoy, obviously, with the injury, there's a lot of concerns that he could drop a lot further than that, right? We saw Will Johnson and Benjamin Morrison. They dropped into the second round last year, and they were top 20 talents. But injuries at cornerback, that's something that teams are very wary of. So I think, again, for me personally, my first 2 priorities would be the offensive tackle spots and then another defensive end to try to help out this pass rush. We'll see the order that they go in it. But to me, I have the best player there is Spencer Fano, and I think I love the fit of those 3 guys the best for Detroit system in the way they run their offense, right? He's super athletic like Penei Sewell is, doesn't have the most length, but he could get a little bit stronger. I think the pass protection, the athleticism is certainly there. He gets a little bit stronger, puts on maybe 8 to 10 more pounds and just a little bit more strength, especially in his lower body. I think he could be really darn good, man. I love Spencer Fano. I've loved him this entire process as a fit for the Lions specifically. You can move Sewell to the left side. You've got Fano on the right side, and you have maybe the most athletic tackle duo in the NFL at that point. Fano's really good, man. You watch him climb to the second level. You watch him move laterally, and it's hard not to love him. And he played in a variety of schemes over there at Utah, too.
The Lions have some needs, though. They've got needs at cornerback. And then you look at Kirby Joseph, and you look at Brian Branch, the safety position. There's question marks on those guys. I mean, one's coming off an Achilles. The other, you don't know what's up with his knee. When you come to day 2 of the draft, you come to day 3 of the draft, how pressing will those needs be? And what kind of athletes do you see being there at those positions for the Lions to fill those needs going forward?
The curious one about cornerback for me is I wonder who is going to play on the inside at that nickel spot. Now, I know it's so often occupied by Brian Branch and a lot of their base looks anyway, but Amik Robertson not being there, and you look at some of the guys right now, I mean, they've got Roger McCreary, right? You've got, I think Terrion Arnold even could be an option to play inside a little bit. They re-signed Rock Ya-Sin, but I wonder if it's somebody like a Keontae Scott from Miami, who we know what he can do in, a base nickel defense, right? A 4-2-5, and he's so good in run defense. He was so good for that Miami team this past year. He's solid. He's got some warts in coverage. He has a hard time turning his hips and getting vertical, but down near the line of scrimmage, that's the type of guy you want. I wouldn't be shocked if it was a Keontae Scott. Maybe a little later in the draft, a Chandler Rivers from Duke is somebody I think has got a lot of flexibility when it comes to inside, outside. He's just one of those intelligent corners you want in your room, right? And his technique is really good. So those are a couple of guys I look at. I'm curious to see how they solve this nickel situation, because it seems like for the last couple of years, they've really been shuffling a lot of guys in and out of there, and obviously working through health and battling injuries and all of that too. So if they don't move Terrion Arnold in there, which I would think about, he's got experience in there from Alabama, I think somebody in that nickel position could really fit.
You bring up Terrion Arnold, and he's a guy I wanted to talk about. What were your thoughts of him coming out? I mean, a first-round pick, these first 2 years, really spotty. He showed flashes, but really, really spotty play. Now he's dealing with these legal issues. Not sure how that's going to come out, but that could also add to what he's going through mentally. Sometimes those things bleed onto the field for you. What were your thoughts of him when he came out? Where do you see his upside going forward? And as far as a need goes there, is this a guy you need to think about replacing? Is this a guy who's going to get it and really show why he was a first-round pick? Or where do you fall on him based on what you thought of him coming out in the draft?
Yeah, it's tough because it's really been a struggle, right? And I liked him as, I believe, the third best corner in this draft. I think I had DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell ahead of him, and then Arnold third in that draft. And look, I loved the aggressiveness. I loved, especially when Alabama would put him on the inside, they had some movability, and he just was a guy who made plays on the football and played 100 miles an hour all the time. It feels like in the NFL, though, that he has just struggled, especially with as much man-to-man coverage as the Lions have been using in their defense. He's just struggled to really adjust and bring the technique along with that physicality and with that aggressiveness, right? So again, it's a part where I wonder, maybe he's just not as comfortable in the NFL on the outside. He had nickel experience at Alabama. I wonder if just getting in that in the box role a little closer to the line of scrimmage, more where he can just play that physical style that he wants to, if that would suit him better. If not, and you leave him on the outside and it's looked more like the same in the first 2 years, then you kind of have a bust on your hands and you have to figure out this position still, right? So I mean, and it's tough because drafting Ennis Rakestraw as well, and he's had the injuries, he just hasn't been able to give you anything. So, I mean, one of those two guys emerging as a plus starter would have been good, but Arnold's still got time. I just do wonder if there's some more positional flexibility they could go with to just put him in spots where he's more comfortable, because that's the thing to me. He gets challenged a lot, and there's times where it just doesn't look like he's comfortable out on the island out there.
Well, not only does he get challenged, he gets beaten. He takes penalties and puts teams in bad positions. So he's going to have to get it. And there are a lot of question marks around that, which brings me to my next question. That's another area of need potentially going forward. And you talk about the needs on the O-line. You talk about the needs at edge. In your mind, as the draft goes on, and we talk about pick 50 and we talk maybe they acquire another one, but moving on in the draft, you last time you were on, you talked about the depth at edge. Do you continue to wait, fill one of these other needs on your defense? Is there an edge you're really hoping you can grab in 50 or in the second round if you get another pick? Where do you go? Where's your biggest need if you're thinking like Detroit's thinking right now?
This is a part. I mean, I think they're pretty equal because they have all the veterans that they do at corner. I wonder if they would wait a little longer. But I think at pick 50, if they don't trade down and get, especially another third round pick per se, because they don't have one from the Tesla trade, I think at 50 you're really riding that line of like, who's the right player for us? Because there's a ton of good edge defenders throughout this draft, but there is a little bit more of a drop off in day 3 when you're getting into role players. I still think it's a really deep group, but I look at guys at 50. Do you want somebody like an R. Mason Thomas, just a pure pressure generator out of Oklahoma? Do you want someone who's more balanced, a good run defender like a Zion Young or a Gabe Akis, right? I mean, it's going to depend on just who they really like. And then at corner, like I mentioned, I would prioritize more so, a nickel type of player, which is maybe something you could get in round 4. Like I said, Chandler Rivers from Duke is someone that would really appeal to me. Or if there's somebody on the outside that they absolutely love, let's just say, I don't know, I'm throwing a Chris Johnson from San Diego State out there, right? And you can move Arnold inside. It depends how flexible they're looking to be with that. So I think, as always, it comes down to, just having the right player at the right spot, especially there at number 50, where there's a good number of options at both those positions that I think you're going to be there. But it is the part where your trade down even from 17 makes sense, because in order to fill all 3 of these needs, they're probably going to need a third round pick as well and find a way to trade back and get into that. It's a great conversation to have, because if not, and they're just rolling with 17 and 50, they might only be able to accomplish 2 out of 3, and then they're hoping to get lucky in early on day 3.
Yeah, well, let's look at this. Let's break it down just a little bit and tell me if they do trade, where you think the trade might come from if you're not trading future picks and you're going to trade out of this draft. So after you get through 17, after you get through 50 and nothing in the third, you've got 2 in the 4th, you've got 2 in the 5th, you've got 2 in the 6th, and then you've got your 7th. And just a reminder here, 3 of those picks go from 205 to 222. So that part of the draft, that's where they're going to make their money if they've got those picks, and you got to evaluate that talent at that point in the draft. But if you're going to start wheeling and dealing, where will those picks come from as far as having those picks the way that they're spread out in the draft for the Lions?
If you're talking about them moving back down or back up?
Moving up to acquire, like if you say get into the third round, where do you see those picks coming from to move up into the third round?
I think you're talking about probably, I mean, it's going to obviously be, a move up when you talk about getting into from the early fourth into the mid to late third, right? So I think, you started at probably, you have to start it at 118 looking at this, right? It might take both 118 and 128 or 118 and one of those 2 fifth-round picks to really get it done. Because you're talking about from 118 into the third, you're jumping 20 spots, right? So it's going to take something like, it wouldn't shock me if it took something like 118, 157, and then one of those picks in the 200s to get up 20. Because I think the top 100, the first 3 rounds are really going to be a hard cutoff for this draft. I could even argue the top 80 to 85 when it comes to like day 3 this year. To me, because the draft isn't that deep, is going to feel like day 3. And I think you could see a lot of that from several teams trying to just, let's get into the third round. Let's get a player we know we want. But starting there at 118 and trying to move up roughly 20 spots at least, I think it's going to take a good chunk of that capital. So if they want an impact player at one of those positions we talked about, it is going to be the smart move. Because having 3 seventh-round picks in this draft, I don't think, or what is it, 3 picks, I should say, outside of 200, I don't think it does a whole lot for you, to be honest. I think you're taking flyers. I'm with you. I might move up from 118 and try to get somebody that I know can be a solid contributor, as opposed to just taking 3 or 4 flyers in a draft where the late round flyers are thinner than they usually are.
You know what I've always found interesting, and I don't know if you do this in your work or not, but teams are very adept at putting a value on the pick, what it's worth down the road. And they've always really analyzed this. They broke it down to a science as far as what a pick is worth long-term and short-term. Do you do that in your work? And I'm asking because if you've got from 3 picks from 205 to 222, what the assigned value might be. I know each draft is different, but how you assign value to those picks in order to deal and when it becomes worth it versus not worth it.
Yeah, I mean, there's been several different, there's been different outlets. It goes back to the old Jimmy Johnson days when he had his chart and what each of these picks were worth. And it really is a sliding scale where, you see it with like pick swaps and things like that all the time too on day 3, where it's like, from round 5 onward, there's not that big of a difference unless you're talking about like a whole round. But I mean, if you were to package together, I'm looking for it now, like those 3 picks that the Lions have, what do we have? We have 205 and then we have this 213 and 222, right? Like those are worth something like maybe a back end of the 5th, maybe like
all 3 combined are only worth a late 5th.
Yeah, like it's just that's why a lot of times
that's interesting. I find that interesting.
Yeah, it's just the hit rate, right? I mean, getting a big time, starting caliber even player out of round 6. If you get a starter out of round 6 and 7, that's it.
Work.
Like that you're doing work, right? So it's that thing of like, do you want more darts at players like that, or do you want to slide? It's why so often you just see the pick swaps where it's like, okay, I'll move up 10 spots here and you move down 10 spots there and things like that. Because I mean, you rack them up. Like even if you were trying to make a trade earlier in the draft, up from let's say 50, the 7th rounders, they're throw-ins, right? I think at that point you get to a point like once you get to especially picks like 200 and beyond, or it's like if you have multiple of them, cool, and some teams are just trying to rack them. And a lot of times, even during the season, when teams are trading for 6th and 7th rounders, they're just creating capital to just make smaller moves within day 3 like that. So it takes a lot. I mean, and that's the thing about not having a ton of premium capital. When you talk about moving up, let's say from 118 back into the 4th round, or into the 3rd round, I should say, 20 spots, that's going to take a real chunk of that day 3 capital you have. But there's some GMs that'll go, hey, that's why I have it, right? That's why I collect all these picks. It's not to take, some teams like the Steelers, they have 13 players. I don't believe they're going to, or they have 13 picks. I don't believe they're going to take 13 players. They're going to use some of those day 3 picks to move up. And it would, to me, especially once you start getting towards round 4 and beyond, it's about getting the guys you want, right? And I know that the idea of like, throw as many darts as possible. But if you're throwing darts at guys you don't want, what's the point, right? So I would rather secure 1 that I want than 3 that I don't.
What are you looking for if you have those picks? Are you looking for reinforcements on your O-line? You're looking for reinforcements on your D-line? Are you trying to get guys to play in your secondary at that point? What kind of athletes in this draft specifically are available at that point in the draft?
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking like late round 6 and 7,
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, as always, you're looking. There's trench depth. Every team is hurting
Always
for
looking
trench
for
depth,
that,
right? You want, and what you're looking for more so in picks like that is, who fits in with our culture, right? I know Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes are big on that, right? Who fits in with our scheme? Sometimes you have guys who are just, even in college they played and they were really good in just this one specific scheme where, some teams would like him in round 4 because of the fit, others only round 7. So scheme fits, culture fits. Obviously, I think when you get that late in the draft, it's really when you start talking about, the forgotten phase, talking about good special teams players, right? Can this guy come in and contribute and make my roster on special teams? Or is he a kick returner? Is he, the draft's best punt gunner, something like that? Like that starts to matter when you talk about round 5 and beyond to me as I go special teams into a decent backup. And if he became a starter, home run pick then that late, right? So there's so many different factors and it just depends what your team is missing, what you're looking for. And if the idea is just to create depth in general and you feel good about your roster, that's great. Philadelphia gets to a lot of those picks in round 6 and 7 because the roster is so darn good that they go, we'll take a talent. We'll just take a talented guy and see if we can turn him into an eventual something with the pressure of knowing he doesn't have to start right away. So there's a lot. I think people don't give that enough credit. It seems like sometimes, people have this perception on day 3. Well, you just take some guys. You get out in 200. What's pick 200? Who cares? But, the scouts and the GMs that win those rounds, look at the Rams. I mean,
exactly.
Puka Nacua, 5th round pick. The Niners with taking Brock Purdy when in no way at the time did they need a quarterback, but last pick in the draft, get your scouting in. If he's depth, great. If he's a starter, a plus starter, home run pick. So there's a lot that goes into it for sure. I mean, there's so many, and every single team, the further away you get from the top of the draft, the more different their boards are going to be and the more team-specific guys they're going to be looking for.
I really have thought over the years that Brad Holmes and his scouting staff have been great talent evaluators. I think they've gotten some really diamonds in the rough late in the draft and moving up. They've identified guys they like and they've really hit on. And I think we're going to see that with Isaac Tesla, who's going to get more lion's share of the reps in that receiver spot going forward because of the receivers that they moved in and out and this opportunity coming his way. But I'm also looking across the board and I'm looking at the FanDuel odds again with the Lions being the favorite in the NFC North. But I'm wondering what the competition out there might be doing. What are the Packers looking for? What are the Bears looking for to improve their teams right now going forward? How do you see their draft boards looking?
Yeah, the Bears are a fun one, especially with 2 second-round picks getting that DJ Moore trade going. They got the number 60 back from Buffalo. So the Bears, to me, I mean, the goal is obvious. Maybe they add one more weapon or a little more reinforcement up front on the O-line. But to me, defense. I mean, they have needs on the D-line. I think they could use one more linebacker in a good linebacker class. Safety, they need a starting free safety. They just don't have one right now. I love Kobe Bryant. I love the addition from Seattle, but they need another one after losing Kevin Byard. So they're going to attack the defense. There's no question about it with at least most of their picks. I think they could add one more weapon, maybe even with one of those second rounders, but I would look for them at that 25 spot. Maybe a safety, but defensive line. There's going to be a lot of defensive linemen there available to them. If it's a Peter Woods, Caden McDonald on the inside, if it's a TJ Parker off the edge, they're going to try to get better. And then the Packers, look, no first round pick. I think the theme is the same, similar for them. They need to get better in the trenches. No question about it. I don't love their starting 5 on the offensive line as it's currently projected, especially on the interior. I'm a little shaky on that. And, we saw at the end of last year, and now they've traded Rashawn Gary, and they traded Colby Wooden, and Kenny Clark is gone. Their pass rush beyond Micah Parsons is non-existent. When he got hurt, it just completely went away. So to me, the Packers especially are a team that they're very lucky. This is a deep defensive line draft, especially off the edge. I think they're going to take someone very possibly in that second round. I think it picked 52. And they're going to put Lucas Van Ness on the hot seat, man, because they need to find somebody else who can rush the passer on that defensive line other than Micah Parsons. And it's even bigger this year because Parsons is coming off the injury.
This is going to be exciting. What are your plans? How do you watch the draft? Do you get together with your co-host and watch it? Do you watch it by yourself and just lock yourself in a room and focus in? Like, how do you watch the draft? How do you prepare for your shows with all this coming your way?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's a little different this year because we're not going to be doing a live draft show. I've been involved in it live in some sense with PFF for the last 3 years, especially doing the live show the last 2 years. So it's going to be a little more relaxed, man. I mean, we did our final 3-round mock today over at Preferred Walk-On. Come over and watch that. Have some fun with that. We did about 2 hours, knocked out the first 3 rounds with a bunch of trades, like I mentioned earlier. But no, this year, I mean, we're kind of discussing that amongst ourselves. It might just be like kind of a get together and probably still a whole lot of tweeting going on. I'll tell you that that much because this is going to be – I think this is going to be a really fun first round to watch because there's just no predictability to it, right? The only thing we know for sure is who's going first. That's it. After Fernando Mendoza, we're 2 days out. We're 48 hours out from it. We don't even know who the Jets are taking. We have no idea at 2. So it's going to be unpredictable. It's going to be a lot of debate, and it's always a lot of debate around the draft and all the scouts and everybody on Twitter prepping for it, right? But I think the different opinions of these teams, or I should say of these players by these teams, are going to be fascinating because I think this year you have so much variance that could happen that one team had this guy 10th on their board. The next team had him 50 and they would have never touched him, right? I think you're getting that more than ever this year. So I think the teams that win this draft, especially on the defensive side of the ball, they're going to set themselves up really, really well because it's overall not the best draft class, but there's talent in every draft class, and the teams that can really collect it, they're going to have a lot of fun in the coming years.
Can't wait to see how it all shakes up. And if you do me a favor and come back on the show after the draft is all said and done and give us your assessment of the guys that the Lions end up with, that'd be awesome. You got time for that?
Absolutely, Trevor. Anytime.
All right. He's the co-host of the Preferred Walk-On College Football Show, NFL analyst, college football and draft expert, Dalton Wasserman. Appreciate the time. Everybody out there who heard his work here today, follow him on X and certainly join him after the draft here on Believe in Lions. And in the meantime, be sure to follow, be sure to like and subscribe, and be sure to enjoy and share this show. And we will see everybody after the draft to see exactly how the Lions fared. Thanks for joining in, everybody. We'll see you again soon. Dalton, thank you very much for the time today, sir.
Appreciate it big time, Trevor.